So we just got done seeing how to create this in a Maple document. And you'll notice the code, this is pretty much exactly what I just typed in. The code here is important that we kind of keep track of things. So deplot, this is the command. And then each one of these little pieces is separated by a comma. And each one of those little pieces is important. The first one is, what's your equation? What's your DE? The second one is, what's your dependent variable? And of course, notice that's as a function. And then this guy right here, that represented our horizontal domain. And this is our range increment, so this is our vertical range. So what do we care about in the vertical direction? And those really are the four pieces that make you, or that allow you to create a slope field. And so putting things into syntax is really important. So recognizing the format, this is good to write, and write it a couple of times to get used to it, is the first thing, capital D, capital E, plot, lowercase plot, parentheses, and then we have some pieces. The first piece is you write your differential equation, comma, always separated by commas. The second thing is your dependent variable as a function, right? And then next is your independent, there we go, variable values that you want to see. Next is your dependent, oh, I can't do this, oh. Your dependent variable values. And that's it. Those four things are what you need. So I like to say that these four things right here are the minimum required. But those aren't the only things that you can put in. This is the minimum. Those aren't the only things that you can put in. If you want to, and actually I'll kind of remove this parentheses here, and instead I'll say it actually goes on. You can actually add more things. You can add things like an initial condition. You can add things like options, like graphical options. And then we'll have a closed parentheses there. And so for options, we'll talk about different things here in a second. But there are a couple things that are worth pointing out about the way you communicate with Maple. And so these commands are really particular. Commands and options are particular. And particular in that way that you've probably come to expect with computers. Spelling matters. So if you type in DE-polt, it's not going to work. It's got to be DE-plot. And the second thing that makes sense is commas with no spaces. No spaces. Separate each item. So when you have items inside here, if you want to show that you're going on to another item or another idea or another option, all you have to do is just separate it with a comma. You don't have to include spaces. So a couple things that we can add to our plot. We can specify initial conditions. We can put them in a list in square brackets just after the X range. And I'll show you how to do this here in a second. But notice, just after the X range, that's our independent variable. So if you're thinking about it, it would be like right there. That's where the initial condition would go. So let's do that. Let's add an initial condition and make our solution curve on our Maple document blue. So I'm going to show you how to do that here on the next page, or on the next screen here. So I'm going to use that exact same code. I'm just going to copy and paste because I'm being lazy. But I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say, okay. So I'm going to add an initial condition, and we do that in square brackets. So notice I just added a set of square brackets. Now if I put my initial condition inside there, I can add whatever kind of initial condition I want. So for example, let's say I wanted to make an initial condition y of 2 equals 0. I don't know. And if I hit enter, I can see what Maple does. It says, okay, I'll make your initial condition right there, and I'm going to fill in that particular graph, right? There's only one curve that passes through that point, and that's it. Now, I don't know about you, but the red is okay, but this kind of pukey yellow is really tough to see. So the other thing that we can do is we can add another option out here. So if we add our option out here, we can say, I want to change the color of that particular curve. And of course, the way Maple refers to it, it's the line color. And I want that line color to be blue. And so it's the exact same graph, just with a slightly different color on that line. So there are a whole bunch of different options, and one of my favorite ways to figure out what the options are for line color is to type in a bunch of gobbledygook and see what Maple says. I said line color equals blah, 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 and it says, I don't know what to do with that. I can click on this link and see what to do, or if I want, I can go up here and type in line color into the help menu. It's taken a second. Apparently it's thinking about it. I have no idea why it's taking so long. Hey, there we go. Line color, and it spits up. There's some things. So under DE plot, you'll notice there's stuff in there. I can take a look at the DE plot and go in and view the options for information on the DE plot there. Also, if I leave it just kind of blank and do this, it says error invalid. It doesn't know what to make of this. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. So if I said the number 4, you'll notice that Maple interpreted the line color equals 4 to be a particular color. So if you get comfortable with colors and you say, hey, I like that red, number 4, or hey, I really like the color 10, which is a slightly less red, you can call them up by number. You can call them up by name. There's some crazy names for colors that you can find in there. And we'll be able to take a look at. You can look them up in the help menu or in the options. But what we're going to do now is kind of turn the page and take a look on the next screen, or on the next document, or next page of our notes. And you'll see an example of multiple colors. I don't know why the glare is really bugging me on this. Let me see if I can turn that. It shouldn't be so glary. I don't know why it's so glary. But you can see we can get multiple curves by typing in multiple initial conditions. But notice each one of those initial conditions is inside the bigger outside square brackets. So each one of them is their own little square bracket inside, separated by a comma. So it's a list of initial conditions. So you can do that in Maple to create a whole bunch of solutions. But you'll notice down here, there's a whole bunch of things that I invite you to try doing. So you can always look through help files, do a Google search, but I want you to play around with this. So I'm going to stop the video here, but I want you to try to figure out, how do you make a larger window? How do you make green slope fields? How do you make the arrows thicker? How do you make line segments so that they're not arrows, they're just little line segments? And how do you make solutions that are different colors? So I'm going to leave this as a puzzle for you to figure out as a way of kind of modifying your graph. And then you can check them out later, and we can talk about them in class. But I really do want you to play around with that and see if you can figure out how to do it. Okay, so we'll stop the video here.